Hey everyone, Yusuf with SLC TV, and this guy works for the city, I think. Do you work for the city?
I do. I'm Nick Norris. I'm the city's planning director.
Nick Norris, the planning. It's so crazy to meet you here, right here on 9th. Can you tell us? I don't actually know what planning is. What's planning?
Well, a lot of people don't, right? But so city planning and the planning division for the city really is about helping the city come up with future land use plans that help address how we're going to grow as a city. And so we're charged with doing that in the planning division. We've got a great team of, total of 42 people who do everything from update our community plans and monitor how they've been working to monitor and administer the zoning code, and process land use applications, review development permits, and all those fun things.
Okay, no, that's a great introduction to what city planning is, guys. Pay attention, take notes. You mentioned land use a couple times. What is that? What does land use mean?
So land use is how property is used. You can look around you, and whether it's your home or the home next to you or the shop down the street or where you work, those are all considered land uses. And the zoning code determines where in the city those land uses can be, what can be built, and how things operate.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, back here with Nick, Central 9th. I hear talk of something called a mixed-use zoning consolidation. I know those words, not in that order. Can you tell us what that's all about? Like, what's going on? Is that the newest thing in planning? What's going on?
This is a big deal, right? So right now in the city, we have more than 24 different zoning districts that allow commercial and residential. So those are our mixed-use zoning districts. And because we have so many, the rules are different in each one of those. Maybe sometimes they're only slightly different. Maybe one zone will allow 5 more feet of building height than the next one. And so we're looking at consolidating those down to make our code easier to use. And that has a lot of benefits. Like, first, it saves the city staff resources, because we can do zoning reviews a lot quicker if we have fewer regulations. It also saves architects and designers a lot of time, because it's easier for them to find the rules and know what to do and what to include as they're coming up with building plans. And it makes it easier for people to understand what can happen, right? It's hard to know what can happen when you have 26 different zoning districts, and each of those zoning districts have different rules, and sometimes you might live next to 2 different or 3 different zoning districts, and so you don't really know what to expect next door, across the street, or down the block.
Okay, so this is really good. I have this metaphor forming in my head, you guys. So this is like, and you tell me how correct I am, and if not, please correct me. This is like if you're in a sandwich shop, and there's like 84 things on the menu. You have like 84 different sandwiches. Some of them have 18 ingredients, some of them have 3. If you're the chef, if you're the person back there making those sandwiches, you're trying to figure out, it's like, which one's a 22? I don't remember. Does that have jalapenos? I don't know. So you're trying to streamline the process to make it easier to make those sandwiches. So the people in the background struggling, the people out front who are ordering know what they're ordering, and they know what they're going to get. They know they're not going to be any surprises. It's going to be an easier process. How accurate is that? Is that a fairly simple, albeit simple, example of how
accurate? Actually, I think that's pretty good. If you're, in that analogy, the person making the sandwich is that city planner behind the counter who's looking at plans and trying to figure out how it all works and everything else. And if you have 18 different ingredients to look at, you can imagine that's going to take a long time to make that sandwich, right? Same thing with doing a zoning review. That's going to take a long time to do that. And so at the end of the day, that means it's slower to get that end product to the customer. So whether that's housing, a place for a business to open, putting a sign on a business, all of those things are slowed down when you have a complicated, long list of rules.
Got it. Rules, zoning, sandwiches.
All of the above.
All of the above. I'm really hungry now, guys. Is it lunchtime yet? So we're here again with Nick. You mentioned mixed use. What does mixed use mean?
So mixed use really means it can be anything from a building that has a business down on the ground floor and then apartments above it, like behind us. It can be a neighborhood where there's a mix of different types of housing, whether it's single-family homes or townhomes and businesses. We're in the Central Ninth neighborhood, which is really a characteristic of mixed-use neighborhood.
No, okay, so yeah, so this area right here we're standing in, a lot of mixed use here in and around us. What are the benefits of mixed use compared to, let's say, another type of land use in the city?
Yeah, well, the biggest benefit is that people can live near where daily needs are. And the biggest benefit of that is that it means people have choices on how to get to those daily needs. So if you lived in the Central Ninth and you wanted to go out and grab a bite to eat, you could walk down the street, you could walk around the corner. If you wanted to go to a park, you could jump on your bike or a scooter and bike or scoot up to Liberty Park. If you needed to go to the grocery store, you could jump on the light rail and take it to one of the nearby grocery stores. And so the key thing is you're not in your car, and that has a lot of benefits to the city and the region as a whole. It helps reduce the wear and tear on our roads, right, which is a big thing right now. It helps improve our air quality because we're driving less, even if it's a small number of people who are doing it. If we can reduce the amount we're driving by 10%, that's a big impact on our air quality. And it also helps with our water quality. So a lot of people don't realize that, but the wear and tear from your tires, the fluids that leak out of every vehicle that has fluids, all end up in our water. And so that impacts our water treatment plant, it impacts our creeks, our streams, our rivers, our lakes, the Great Salt Lake, and so it's all connected.
All connected, guys. You heard it here first. These are some things I never thought about, probably don't want to think about. I did not even think about car debris in our water supply. That's great. I'll be thinking about that tonight. But yeah, no, thanks. This is a great explanation about mixed use, Nick. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, so we've heard a lot about zoning, mixed use, sandwiches for some reason. I don't know, guys. But now let's hear about the why. There's a lot of changes coming up, but I know people are curious about the why. I'm curious about the why. Nick, what can you tell us?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of the reasons, but some of the bigger picture why is to think about the city as a whole, and we have a finite amount of land. There's only so much that can happen on the land in the city. And so, for example, housing can only be built on about 36% of all the land in the city. And people ask, well, why don't we just make it easier to build on more of the land? Well, there's some reason, right? Like, we don't want to build homes in City Creek Canyon. That's 16% of the land area in the city. Our parks and open space and foothills, we don't want to build in those areas. And that's another huge piece of land. And so what happens when we only have a third of the land, a little more than a third of the land that can be built on, all of the land uses, all the businesses, all the homes are all competing for the same amount of space. And so it makes it really hard for someone to find a place to open their business, or for someone to build new housing that is attainable for people based on their incomes and everything else. And so one of the benefits of mixed use is that it starts, all of those uses start sharing space. And so it's more efficient use of land. It has less impact overall on our utilities. You don't need to make as long of sewer pipes and water pipes and everything else. Yeah. You have it there, and you may need to upgrade some of those things, but that's better than sprawling out into other parts. Even if it's outside of the city, by Salt Lake City taking on more mixed use and more density, we're actually helping absorb a lot of the growth of the region that otherwise may be sprawling into areas where nobody wants to see development.
Got it. So this is like a classic example of building up and not out. Is that accurate?
That's perfectly accurate. Yep.
Okay. See, and I'm one of those people that I'm stuck on sandwiches, guys. Sorry. It's like sometimes I'd rather have a taller sandwich. Why have 1 foot of sandwich this way when you can have a foot of sandwich? This is an unpopular opinion, but this is
a little different. I don't know if the analogy works.
Oh no.
It's only so big.
That's fair. You know what? Nick's got a point. He's got a point. Heading here just off 9th now. This area zoned residential. How will this zoning amendment, will it affect residential zones, or what's going to happen with these areas like this?
So it will not affect the areas that are zoned strictly residential. So the single family zones, multifamily zones are not going to be impacted at all by this. And so, this is just looking at our mixed use and commercial zones.
So we've been talking today a lot about mixed use and zoning. but I think for the average person, they're really, really curious to see how will it impact them. So what does this look like moving forward? Like what is it going to look like for the average person? What can they expect?
Yeah, so under this proposal, there'll be 6 new mixed-use zones, and they're categorized based off building height. So there's a number, it's MU2, for example, that's mixed-use 2-story buildings, kind of like what you see a little bit behind us. And then that goes all the way up to an MU11, which is 125-foot buildings, 11 stories. The idea behind all these is that the zoning standards really are aimed at producing ground floor commercial space, similar to what we've seen. And behind us, you can see a variety of scales. So this area actually has buildings that could fit into 4 or 5 different of these MU zones, which is why it's such a great example of mixed-use zoning. And so the zones were grouped based on their currently allowed building height. So they're very similar. So, for example, the MU2 zone is consolidating 3 different zoning districts that all have a building height of 25 or 30 feet. So they're really similar. They're grouped together.
Got it. Okay. Amazing. Now, with all of these topics in mind, one thing that's going to come up consistently for our residents, for the city, is affordable housing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that fits into this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So zoning is going to restrict how much housing can be built regardless, right? And so by making it easier and removing some of the barriers that zoning's created for housing, that in and of itself makes housing cheaper to produce and cheaper to deliver. That helps stabilize housing costs over time. In Salt Lake City, we also have affordable housing incentives that allow for additional building height, lot coverages, things like that, if you're including a certain amount of homes in your development that meet different levels of affordability based on the area median income. The idea is that if you only make 30% of the area median income, your housing should be 30% of that income. So you're not out there trying to spend or having to spend so much money on housing. And so the affordable housing incentives fit in perfectly with this MU project, and so they'll benefit each other.
Nice. See, this is just one more way the city is trying to provide more affordable housing in our community for all of our residents. So as we all know, Salt Lake City continues to grow. So Nick, can you tell us how this zoning amendment, these changes, fit into the growth of our city?
Yeah, so since 2000, we've added almost 30,000 people to the city, right? And so, one, as a city, we have to plan for that growth. And we have to modify zoning as our growth rates are changing, as our demographics are changing, because people need different things based on a lot of different characteristics that they may have, right? And so by updating and constantly looking at our zoning to see what can happen, we are ensuring that we can accommodate that growth. And one of the things that's happening right now is because we talked earlier about the amount of land that is zoned for residential and mixed use. Right now, it's fairly limited, and that's why we're seeing such huge growth demands in places like downtown, along North Temple, on 400 South, and Sugar House, starting to see it more along the 300 West corridor and West Capitol Hill, is because we have to, there's a lot of people who want to live in Salt Lake. We can't stop that from happening. And so we have to update our zoning to accommodate future population growth.
Nice. All right. So for people that want more information about this project, where would you send them? Where should they go? Yeah,
the best place is to go to the project website. That's where you can find out what information about the actual proposal, the details. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of how zoning's written, you can see an interactive map, so you can click on a piece of property, see how it's changing. There's summary sheets about each of the MU zones that give you things like how tall, how far from sidewalks buildings can be, things like that. And more importantly, there's ways that you can get engaged and learn more. We're going to do a series of walking tours starting in August, some community meetings, a meeting with various groups who request it, to go over the proposal so that people know what's happening and they can weigh in on it.
Nice. Okay, plenty of opportunities to engage more with this project, plenty of ways to get your information. Make sure you check out the website. Thanks, guys. All right, we've reached our end of our time with Nick. If you wanted people to go away with one thing from today's video, what would you have them go away with?
Go to the website and learn more.
You heard it here first and last. Go to the website, learn more, don't get zoned out. Well, that's the end of the interview, guys.